So, do narcissists know that they're hurting us when they hurt us? Let's dive into this today and talk about this. I'm so thrilled to be hanging out with you guys the day before 4th of July. I hope you have big plans, that you're going to be doing something special. I'm going to have a quiet day. My middle son loves to cook, so he's going to be making brisket for my other sons and I, and we're just going to be hanging out. So it'll just be a family day for me for 4th of July. But I'd love to hear what you guys' plans are if you're having something fun, doing something different. But we're going to talk about today intentionality. Do narcissists know that they're hurting us? And I'm realizing that I'm down to 16% on Instagram. So let's see how long we make it, guys, on this iPad before I lose power. I'm trying to think, is there a way for me to plug it in without having to move away too far? But what do you think? We're going to be talking about intentionality. Is it conscious or unconscious? When narcissists and toxic people, cluster B personalities, when they harm us, do you think it's intentional or not intentional? I'd love to know what you think before we kind of dive into the psychologically. For those of you who are new to my channel, I'm glad you see me, Marie. Thank you so much. That's awesome. I appreciate you letting me know that. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr McAvoy. I'm a licensed psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. And, I've been aware of and working with personality disorders since the late 1980s. I saw several as clients over the years. Some of them stayed with me for a long time. I had one that I saw, I think, for at least 7 years. He was a client of mine for at least 7 years. Interesting group. There are far more of them than we think that they are. And I can even tell you, I don't think I diagnosed a single one with MPD. And I know some of you get quite angry when you hear that, but the purpose of it was why? Why do that? Because it wasn't covered by insurance. So why label somebody with something that wasn't going to benefit them? I didn't see their partner. I was just seeing the narcissist. So it really, to me at the time, now I wonder if I would do it differently. If I was counseling these days, I wonder if I would diagnose more often. But that's one reason. I just want to let you know, that's one reason the numbers of MPD is so low, because it's when I was going through school as a psychologist, I was taught not to. I was told there was no purpose in giving a person a personality disorder. It didn't serve them. It didn't benefit them. That would be something that would literally, like an albatross, hang around their neck going forward. So when we talk about these numbers being so low and so rare, anyone who says that, I'm actually a clinician who's diagnosing. I know why they're low, because I, like a lot of others like me, failed to give the diagnostic criteria, because it didn't really matter. So Marie, you're Taffy. So nice to meet you, Taffy. I appreciate that. I hope you're doing well today. So today we're going to be talking about, so Kim says, my wife is fired up by our state's top narcissistic psychiatrist. I'd love to hear more about that. What's happening? And Belinda, I see your request, but I don't take requests to go live unless you pre-plan it with me. I don't know you, and you and I have not talked about it, so I don't know what your intentions are, and it just makes me uncomfortable. So if anybody would like to go live with me, please talk to me beforehand before we do that. I just don't do it on a spur of the moment, but I appreciate the request. So far, most of you are coming in saying that narcissists harm others intentionally. Yeah, let's get into that, because that's a really hot topic. And there's too much censorship on TikTok. Well, you know why, Johnny? It's because it originally was primarily dominated by minors. And so because it was not created necessarily in the first place for adults, then they have to take care of that population. So we have to be careful. I do appreciate that TikTok now is at least giving creators the option to identify something as adult only. So that's a step in the right direction, but I think we have a long ways to go. I know, because I get all sorts of crap on Facebook when the posts are reposted over to Facebook, and I use words like unalive instead of saying what we all know, self-harm. And people are so mad at me and want to know why I do that. And I'm like, well, because this post wasn't created for Facebook. It was created for TikTok, and I have to be careful about what words I use. So I'm thankful that I'm thankful that narcissistic abuse, that the whole realm, that language we use around narcissistic abuse isn't censored. So there's a lot of freedom to talk about what we need to talk about. But back to this issue of intentionality. So let's get into it. I believe that narcissists are harmful. It's intentional, but in an unintentional way. So let me kind of like talk about what do I mean by that. It's intentional in the sense that they're making a conscious decision to make the toxic behavior to do to harm you. You know, if they lie, they know that they're lying. It's not like they have a out of body dissociative experience. They're not in a fugue. They're not having amnesia. It's not like they're a dissociative identity disorder and some other personality took over. No, they know that they're lying, but they don't always understand why they're lying. So there's a piece of it that is an unconscious process, an unconscious effort to defend, but there's also a part of them that is clear that this is unethical or lacks integrity, and they still do it anyway. So it's an intentional in the sense that they have control. On the other hand, there's parts of it that the defense of their ego, the fragility of the shame-based ego, that part of it is unintentional. They're operating out of a defensiveness, which we all do, because you may be right now in a state of denial, or maybe you're projecting right now. Maybe you're saying something is actually, there's a part of it that you're not completely owning about yourself, but you probably aren't conscious of that. Maybe those around you can see it, but you're probably not completely aware that you're doing that. And they're even more, because they're more primitive based defensively, their structures more immature than yours or mine hopefully is, then that means they're even less aware than you and I are. And when I just said you and I are always very aware. So yeah, that part's very hard. Gretel and Hansen said intentional because they switch it on and off depending on who they're with. Yeah, that part, right. So they may say, I don't want this person to know XYZ about me, and then they intentionally withhold or just outright deceive that person around that piece. But then they may go with somebody else and say it doesn't matter if they know. So that part, I agree, is completely under their control. I mean, let's be even more crude. If they're out cheating, they know they're cheating. They know that they have a monogamous relationship with you, so to speak, supposedly. But on the other hand, they may not understand all the reasons that are driving the cheating behavior. So that part may not be completely intentional. Kimberly asks, is everyone narcissistic on some level? Well, I know that there's those who will disagree with me, although I'm going to tell you what is kind of mainstream belief about narcissistic personality disorder is that essentially we're on a spectrum. So yes, you probably have a degree of it. You're not perfectly balanced in the degree that you can show up for yourself and show up for other people. There's going to be this, you're going to at times choose yourself in a self-motivated way, in a not other centered, other caring way that will be harmful to others and beneficial to yourself. And in that moment, you're behaving narcissistically. Hey, Kate, so good to see you. So we all have that bent. But the degree, is it pathological? Are you to the point that you're so egocentric that you can't even appreciate other people around you exist and then attend to their needs while you're attending to your own? Hopefully, most of us aren't that severe, so we're not being that harmful. And the more you cannot appreciate other people and see their needs, the more pathological that you are. Kim, I saw that you sent me more information. I'm going to go back and read that. You had 22 years of abuse. I'm on my last legs going into the divorce and I'm broken. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Can a borderline personality disorder also be narcissistic? Yes. I also think Swarnick days that there's a fluidity between them, that sometimes borderlines can behave narcissistic. Sometimes borderlines can behave antisocial and behave like a psychopath. I also think there's a fluidity between the cluster Bs. They can act like each other. They may have a primary state, so the primary state may be borderline personality disorder, but it doesn't mean there not may not be moments of narcissism. But you also are right, and they can have what's called a mixed personality disorder, in which there's multiple personality presentations. So you could have a borderline at the same time qualify for narcissist, and they can coexist. Not very common, but that's possible. So Kim said, my wife was fired by our state's top narcissistic specialist psychiatrist, and that you're broken and on your last leg. I am so sorry to hear that. Sounds like a terrible situation. I bet you are feeling like you're at your wit's end, very much so. So Billy Tarr says, I have bad nerves and bad people make me nervous. Yeah, I can understand that you don't feel safe. People who aren't safe do make us feel unsafe. That's the way we're hardwired. That makes a lot of sense to me, actually. A lot of sense. Um, yeah. So yeah, so someone, Kim, you're talking to Nuvia. So Nuvia says, what does it mean a narcissist comes to the conclusion to cut family? Um, so are you sure that that's the person who's the narcissist, Nuvia, who's cutting the family? If it is, sometimes they do that as a way to get a jump on hurting everyone around them before everyone around them can get a jump on hurting them. Sometimes when narcissists know that they have basically blown all the main relationships in their life, they will go ahead and just cut everybody as a way to avoid being abandoned. So if you think about it, okay, let's kind of unpack this for a second. If your core is you feel like you're massively by the way, they don't think this. This is so innate. This is so unconscious. This is not like a mental process they have. But let's for a moment pretend it's a mental process. If you're aware that you're flawed. Now, I'm not saying they're flawed. I'm saying they think they're flawed, okay? If they think that they're massively flawed, so flawed that if anybody really knew who they were, they wouldn't be chosen, loved, or liked, which is, see, that's what narcissists are covering. They're covering what they perceive to be this brokenness, this woundedness, emptiness, this lack of something. So all of what they build on top of it is a facade to hide this internal self that they think is very beyond lovable. Now that's not true, because everybody is imperfect. I mean, that's the beauty that they're missing, is that if they would able to take a chance and let us see their brokenness, they would find out we're broken too, and that there's something beautiful about sharing that vulnerability and intimacy. But they don't go there. They don't risk it. So they build this facade on top of it. But what is the core fear? The core fear then would be, if you saw me, if you knew me, you would reject me. Okay, so that's your core fear. You build this persona on top of it. Well, then when everything's going to hell in a handbasket, what are you going to do? Well, you don't want people to find out, because if you believe that falsely, if they found out, they're going to reject you. And maybe based upon all the crappy things you've done, maybe they actually would. Maybe you deserve that. But what do you do to protect that fragility? You dump and bail everyone first, right? That way, then you have no day of reckoning. There is no consequence because you've cleared the slate yourself. So my suspicion is, if the situation you're describing it is as you describe it, they may have cut everybody off because it's a preemptive strike, because they anticipate everyone's going to cut them off first. Yeah, I agree with you, Price. I mean, I just had this lately. I've been putting out content about victim blaming. So Price wrote, even before you realize they're a narcissist, you're already being harmed. Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. That I've been putting up a lot of content lately about victim blaming, because we get targeted, groomed, and prepared for these relationships. And they're very much, in fact, there's a new creator. She's not following me back, but I love her stuff. It's called Little Behavioral Group. I'm going to think about it. She's a one who came out of Children of God cult, the Children of God's cult. She survived it. She's both on Instagram and on TikTok. I'm not for sure she's on YouTube, but she is dissecting cult mentality, cult dynamics, and cult tenets. It's fascinating. When you read through her top 10 tenets, you're going to think, oh my goodness, you're describing a group process of what happens to narcissistic abuse survivors in a one-on-one process. We experience it directly in with one person. She's describing what happens in a context of an organization or of a group. the kind of group think. But the same thing happens on an individual basis, which is what we experience. And basically, we experienced a form of brainwashing. And there are people out there who do not want to hear that. They want to believe that we have free choice, that we are freely aware of all options, that we don't know that we're being deceived and exploited. And I hate to tell them that they're wrong. They're wrong. So I completely agree with you, Price, is that by the time we realize something is gravely off, we often have developed a trauma bond by then, because they've been so good at using intermittent reinforcement, using suggestibility techniques in order to get us under their control. They've also cut us off from our social support system, so we're isolated. They've made us simultaneously need them while they're also this is weird, wild dynamic. So by the time we wake up, we're often thoroughly entrenched in a very toxic situation, and often they get us into a place where there's legal ramifications, financial ramifications, maybe there's custody issues. So walking out is going to have dire consequences, makes it very, very difficult to leave. So I understand. In fact, I just posted today top 3 reasons why people victim blame. We don't like to see ourselves as vulnerable. We don't like to know that there are predatory people who are using our hardwiring, innate need for belonging against us in order to get us into our relationship. And this is basic hardwiring. There's a great book out there called A Theory of Love, The Theory of Love. And in it, they break down how we connect with other people. It's not about talking about narcissistic abusive relationship. It's just a book about how we connect and our sense of belonging. They found that when infants are held, it actually acts as a neurological regulation. Their heart rates will drop, their body temperatures will rise, they move more into less distress. That's simply by being held. These are infants that have no oh, mom loves me. There's nothing, no conscious thought happening. This is simply just what happens on a neurological level. So that doesn't go away. That's one reason they say if you're living alone, those who have pets live longer and do better. Why? Because the simple act of being touched and having a warm body next to you has incredible impacts on our physiology. So you take all of that hardwiring and even more, and then you move it into an exploitive relationship that's deliberately using us against you. I had it happen to me this week. I had a date on last Thursday. This guy didn't text a whole lot. He would send me a picture or two once in a while, and then share something kind of personal. I don't know if I believe anything he shared, but he would share something, and it felt like, oh, this guy's actually being vulnerable. Well, one of the pictures he sent me was this gorgeous photo. I could tell a photographer took it. It wasn't something, you'd have to be really good with your phone to grab that photo on a phone. So I asked him, while I'm busy going over to Google reverse image search, I'm asking him, did you take this? And he came back and he wrote, yes, just as Google reverse search came up with who took it and a gorgeous poem that's associated with it. So I take a screenshot of that photo that obviously he didn't take, that he just now lied saying he took, and said, that's awfully odd. These are identical. He didn't own it. And he sent me another photo instead, trying to up the game, trying to hope that he's going to throw me. Now, he wasn't that good. But that's a minor example of exploitation. Now, you take someone who's even more skilled and they know even better how to play you and me. Wow, we're in trouble. I mentioned Don Hennessy, I think last week. Don Hennessy in his book, How He Gets Into Her Head. And I think this is true for both men and women. I know that Don did it because he worked mostly with women, so that's why he's talking about women. But one of the things he said, and I really love this, and I think this is in his chapter 2. He says in chapter 2, don't ever get arrogant thinking that somehow you're better than those of us who've been a victim, that somehow you know how to outsmart these people, that your boundaries are that good, or that you are so confident and so assertive they would never target you as a target. He said, all that means is you've just not met skilled enough offender. The difference between us as victims and those who've not been victimized is they've not met that skilled of an offender. That's the only difference. That's the only difference. Nobody can stand on principle and say that they're that healthy that can spot them. Because, by the way, I'm a psychologist. Almost swore there. I'm a psychologist. Do you think of anybody who should be? I worked with predatory people. I rejected them as clients. If they came into my office and because I had a private practice, it wasn't smart for me, and my hours were in the afternoon and the evening, and I was alone, I would move them on. I had to get good at spotting somebody that I wouldn't want in my office after 7 o'clock. But I still missed it when I met this guy. I still missed it because he was that good. The guy I met, he'd gone through hundreds of relationships. He had lots and lots of practice at it. I mean, he was highly sophisticated, masterful at it. I watched him when we in the middle of our marriage, we had a breakup, and I was following and spying him, and I saw him working on another woman, picking her up. I watched him groom our nurse for his mother. So it's just highly, highly toxic. So anybody who says that they can somehow not get caught or they're better or there's something wrong with you as a victim, they don't understand the research. They don't understand human biology, human psychology. They just don't understand what actually happened. They've been lucky. That's the issue. They've been lucky. So Nikki's asking, how do you know that you've met the signs of a narcissistic person? What I would do, Nikki, is I would pull up those 9 criteria in the DSM-5, like prone to jealousy, and then begin to write all the behaviors that you know are signs of jealousy, like comparing, one-upping you, running you down for having something wonderful happen to you, competing, going out and buying the same thing that you have, or making fun of what you do have. Like, in other words, so sit there and take every single one and then give all these examples. And I think that will help you get better at identifying them. But here's another really big thing, and that is watch for the sense of confusion. Watch for someone who creates a sense of confusion. Like I told you about that date, I felt like here we had this nice date. It went well. He sent me a note right away when I got home. And then I hardly hear from him for a couple days. And then what he does send to me is photos. And then he tells me that he's gone. He lives like an hour away, but he tells me he's 4 miles away shopping. Why would he tell me that he's come down 4 miles away to go shopping and not invite me to meet up with him? That's weird, If we had such a good date, you right? See that confusion. I didn't know where I stood with him. You start to feel vague and unsure, and it just feels weird. Then run. This person's not healthy. This person's not healthy. If my partner keeps cheating me and even gives me an STD, are they narcissistic? Maybe username 123, maybe not. It could be for other reasons too. Yeah, Fenrir, he probably was setting me up. Thank God I said, no, thank you, I'm out of here. Cincy Girl 2 of Texas says her guy was RDL with his initials, and then not long I named him Riddle. Exactly. If you start to feel like somebody's a riddle, then that's a sign that this person's really not good. Healthy people don't make us question ourselves. They don't leave us in a state of doubt. And I agree with you, Marie. They don't leave us with the drama and chaos. You're exactly. Yeah, how long? So Rabbit Owl said, how long should people wait to talk to each other? Some people say every day is suspicious and too long is bad. What's the average? I don't know if I can answer that because, I'm assuming you're talking about dating right now. I think it depends on the person. It depends on, so there's people working and not, I had a guy that I just met last night who said, how often would you like? I know you're busy. I want to be respectful. And I thought that was sweet. He's asking, and I can say, hey, I do work. I work hard and I'm not available during the day. But it kind of varies. I would say anybody, here's a couple things that I would watch out for. Anybody, yeah, Tammy, I will talk about the trauma bond. That's a great question. And then also, Anne Marie, could they be narcissistic and not know it? That's another really great question. So Rabbit Owl, I would say if somebody's making you feel pushed and not respected, that's a sign they're toxic, or at least a sign that they're not good for you. If you if they make you feel like you're questioning yourself and you don't know where you stand with them, that's a sign that somebody's not right or good for you. You should have a sense of calmness, not anxiety, not doubt, and not confusion. So that was, I think that's a wrap up to my best final sign is to ask yourself, what's your gut saying? How comfortable are you? Or does this person make you feel safe? I think that's a really big sign is if you don't feel if you don't feel safe, then cut it and run. So that's a very, very important sign. Here's a fascinating statistic that's actually quite uncomfortable. Sandra L. Brown, I got to interview her. And so if you're interested, you can buy that webinar. It's a great webinar. But in that webinar, she said that 20% of the world is predatory. 20% of the world is predatory. Years ago, back when I was working with a psychologist I hugely respect, he was my mentor, my supervisor. He was also the disciplinary chair of the state, meaning he disciplined psychologists. So he really understood ethics and integrity of good practice and integrity of people. And I asked him one time, I said, "Doctor, what percentage of the world's normal?" And he looked at me and he said, 7%. 7. So you're trying to find that lucky 7%. 20% of the people you meet actually are dangerous. But 93% of the people you meet are probably not very healthy. You're looking for someone in that 7th percentile. That's really hard to find. That is really, really hard to find. So trust your gut. Trust your gut. If you're feeling edgy, if you're feeling confused, you're feeling this longing like you can't, you want to see them and you don't know where things stand, all of that is a sign that this may not be a good relationship. So let me jump back to these other two questions. Can I explain it? I'm going to take Anne-Marie's first. Can a person be narcissistic and not realize it? Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of them don't know because it's part of their hardwiring. It's part of their personality. So it'd be like for me to say, like, let me give you my example. I found out at 53 that I was autistic, that I'm a late diagnosed autistic woman. How I found out was because my sons were being diagnosed. And then I realized my father probably was. And then I had a social worker look at me and say, "And you don't think that you are?" Like, I said, no, I'm not. She goes, "I'd rethink that if I were you. You are." And then I went out and started doing all the research. It's like, sheesh, Yeah. So how could I not know, right? Now, I knew something different about me. I've known always that I was an outsider, and I knew I was really struggling with relationships, and I was very sensitive to sensory motor, and I was clumsy at all get out. I knew that, but I didn't know I had autism. The same is for narcissistic personality disorder, and the same for any personality disorder. It's part of their hard wiring. So it'd be like you not realizing that there's some quality of you, like maybe you're really good at empathy. Like, would you know that? I mean, you'd have to have someone say to you, you're really, really good at empathy, and most people are just not as sensitive as you are. That's kind of what happens. It's part of their hardwiring. It's not a condition. It's not like they feel like they're suffering from something. They don't feel like they're suffering from anything, which is why they say when you cause problems, that you're the one who's causing problems, when you're really just identifying the fact that they're creating all this drama and chaos and confusion. So trauma bond. Let's talk about a trauma bond. A trauma bond is, I kind of started into that a little bit today, and I just didn't go very far with it. It's Debbie, who decides what's normal? That's a good question, actually, Debbie. I like it. I appreciate you asking me that. I'm going to circle back after we talk about a trauma bond. Trauma bond is actually a form of dependence. You're creating an artificial need of one person for another, and you do it by getting them to doubt themselves. You create a state of confusion, and you require compliance, and you also create them in a constant state of ambiguity. They don't really know what's up and what's down. So there's stages to it. There's 7 stages. And I know I probably won't get them all right, but the first stage is love bombing, which you feel like you've met this perfect person. So you meet the false persona that's been created specifically for you. I mean, it's not, they have watched you, they have tested you, they have been grooming you, and then they're mirroring and mimicking and parroting you. So you meet this incredible person, but then they begin to suggest, You're right. It does look like it's coming out of the wall. Then they begin to do things that kind of slightly erode your confidence in yourself. For the TikTok can't see it, and Instagram, I'm sorry, YouTube doesn't see it quite the way that it does for Instagram. I have a picture behind me with a boat, and the way it is on Instagram, it actually looks like it's coming out towards the room. It's really wild. It's just the way that the camera is turned. And I am going to lose. I've got to find that cord. Or I'm going to lose Instagram here because I'm down to 7%, so that's not good. So after the love bombing, which you think you've met your soulmate, they begin to slightly introduce criticism and deflate you. But they do it in a way of, don't you want to be better? So, they do it in this real subtle way that makes you feel like they're doing it for your best interest. Like they're trying to help you be a better driver, or whatever, maybe better cook or better housekeeping or better whatever. But they're quite quietly, subtly suggesting that you're not all that and you're not all that together. And then they also use intermittent reinforcement. So they show up and then they disappear, and then they show up and they disappear, and you're just left with not quite for sure where things are with them, because they leave you in a state of hungering and uncertainty. So all of this is happening. While they're doing that, they start to introduce gaslighting, which then to suggest, instead of the issue being whatever the issue is the way you remember it, your sanity. The issue is your feelings. The issue essentially is you. So they do that as a way to make you begin to doubt yourself and doubt what you feel and see and hear and know. So all of this is happening, which is basically eroding your confidence in yourself. And while that's happening, at the same time, they're cutting you off from your social support system, and they're isolating you. So now you're increasingly dependent on them. And as that happens, you now feel addicted to them. And you're turning to them for these basic decisions. And yet at the same time you turn to them, they're abusing you, which then erodes your confidence. And all of that is creating cognitive dissonance, which is a dual reality. They seem like both the good person and a bad person. This seems like the best relationship ever and the worst relationship ever. And you can't figure out which it is, what's real. So you're in an actual neurological state of confusion that Sandra Brown says it's like your brain's on fire. Those are her words. Your brain's on fire. If this feels like, oh my goodness, you just described my situation, I have a online course called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. It helps you break the confusion so that you can actually make decisions. You can get clarity to know, is this a good relationship? What should I do next? If this is exactly where you're at, please check out First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. It's both an online course. You can also buy the book through Amazon. So while all this is happening, you become increasingly, Out of the Fog's another good book, increasingly dependent on this person. You're becoming depressed, you're submitting, and you're not even wondering whether or not if life is worth living. And you feel like you're crazy. Now you really feel like you're crazy. I don't these days. Someone asked, do I take clients? I don't counsel these days. These days, I primarily focus my efforts and time on a group called Toxic Free Relationship Club. So if you'd like more of this, more support, weekly group video chats with me, online support with a community, a whole host of resources, including that online course I just told you about is free to that group. It also includes access to my book. I gives more access to me. All of that is for less than one coaching call a month. It's $75 a month. Toxic Free Relationship Club. Link is in my bio. It's a fantastic group, amazing people. And once a week we meet and talk about your issues, and you just get all these resources. Exactly. So that's actually, if you're thinking, oh, I really need that course, I would suggest the better, because you also get all the webinars, the better value for your money is that membership. You'll get all of it for the membership. And then you can try it out. Try 1 month out, see if you like it. And then you can decide if you want to continue or not. It's a month to month. So you just pay month to month. And it's both men and women. I have both men and women in the group. And both men and women are active. So that's really cool. So that's what a trauma bond is. Oh, you're welcome, Charlene. I hope you liked Love You More. Charlene says she had my book and she really likes it. I appreciate that. Yeah, so that's a trauma bond. I hope that answered the question. And somebody else, there was another question. Oh, we already talked about the other question, but somebody else brought, oh, do they, there was another great question somebody asked. And I said, let's talk about it next. So let me go back to that. Oh, who decides what's normal? Debbie asked, who decides what's normal? How many books do I have? Well, it depends on where you want to start. If you want to know what happened to me, you want to then read Love You More. So if you're just looking to know, like, wow, I'm not the only one, this can happen to anybody. Did I really go through narcissistic abuse? Then this is the book that just describes what happened to me. It's told like a story. It's like written like true crime story. If you want help breaking cognitive dissonance, you want First Step to Leaving a Narcissist. And wouldn't you know, of course, I don't have it over here, but I can grab it. First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist is this book. This is the one that breaks cognitive dissonance. And if you're out of a relationship and you're healing, then you'll want to get Surviving to Thriving. I wrote this is a workbook, and I wrote it with Lisa Sunny, Surviving to Thriving. This is the 6 steps to healing after a narcissistically abusive relationship. So those are the 3 books that I have out for narcissistic abuse. But let's talk about normal. What is normal? Who gets to decide what's normal? I think this is a great question, Deb. I'm sorry, you maybe don't appreciate being called Debbie, but I would say normal is a person who knows how to handle their emotional well-being, their psychological needs in a way that's respectful to other people. That's what I would say is normal. It's somebody who does not ignore or repress or oppress or attack, or it is a person who sees other people and finds that careful balance of seeking their needs while at the same time respecting the needs of other people around them. And I think we have a rough time with that, a very, very hard time with that. I think it's easy to feel that we are so entitled that we then run roughshod over other people's needs, or that we've been raised in such a broken way that we don't even see other people's needs. So yeah, I think it's really hard, and that's why 7%. Yeah, it's low. 7%. That's really low. Yes, stargazing. Lisa Sunny and I co-wrote Surviving to Thriving. Yeah, that was kind of a fun adventure. She'd had the first draft done and said, I really needed it edited. And then she goes, really, actually, I'd really love a psychologist to come in and add more psychological stuff to it. So that's what I did. So we then co-wrote it. So will a narcissist ever get healthy even in therapy? That's a big question. I don't know how many of you have been following this Robbie Harvey deal on TikTok. There's a little bit of drama around Robbie Harvey because he supposedly is a cured narcissist, and will argue to the point that he is cured. So the question is that possible? I've never met a cured narcissist. Like I said, I worked with one. He came to me after years of therapy. He'd seen several other therapists, and then he stayed with me 5 to 7 years. And I wouldn't say he was cured. He was definitely lots better probably than when I didn't know him from before, so I don't know how bad it was, but I'm not saying I would want to live with the guy, nice guy. But I have not, and I've saw several for years, but I would never say any of them ever got cured. Yeah, it's hard. This is the reason why. Let me kind of describe why. Back to the fact that, and this is based on research, they show neurological deficits. So their neurology is different. The way that their brain functions, the way it metabolizes glucose is different than the normal brain. There's areas that are overactive, and then there's areas that are underactive. One of the areas that are overactive is mentation. That's the preoccupation with oneself. They have way too much energy in that area, too much activity. Too much activity in the area. Areas that are depleted, don't have enough activity, is where empathy and self-reflection reside. So here's the thing. Think about it. How do you change So if you lived in a home with no mirror, how would you know how to comb your hair and find your part line? Right? Maybe you would go find a puddle outside and then hope that it was the ice that formed on it in the middle of the winter wasn't wobbly enough that you could get a decent image that you could try to part your hair, right? But you have to get information back for you to change it. You need something to help you with the correction. So if you're missing the piece that says, and you can't bear it because of shame, hey, I'm too blunt here, or I'm hurtful here, or lying's not cool, or I shouldn't blame people for my feelings. If you're not you can't take the reflection back, coming back when someone says to you, stop doing that, that's harming me, you're hurting me, and you can't hear that, then how do you change it? I don't know how one does that. Now, I had continuing education with Dr. Gregory Lester. I would say he's one of the renowned psychologists in the United States who works with personality disorders, and he purposefully works with personality disorders. He says he has to do a blunt treatment that's kind of, for you and I, would feel rather hurtful. It's you know, he calls it like what it is, calls them out, and he's kind of hard on them, and he's trying to teach them sensitivity and kind of help them to understand some of the rules. But I never heard him say that they change. He said they got a little bit better. This is what he actually said in that continuing education. He had years of experience working with personality disorders. He says they get some of the rough edges rubbed off. That's the best that it gets, to get some of the rough edges rubbed off. Do you want to live with somebody whose rough edges just get rubbed off? I don't really want to. I would like somebody who's sensitive, who sees me, who respects me, who takes ownership's not defensive. I would like that. I don't want just softer edges. So I don't know what to say to the people who say they're cured. I didn't know them beforehand. I wasn't, I didn't diagnose them. I wasn't the one working with them, and I don't know what they're really actually like. All we get on these social media platforms is a curated perspective. So, in a way, we see what they want us to see. That, I don't know how honest all that is. Yeah, so I would be careful. I would be careful of anybody who said, "Oh, I'm a narcissist, but I'm cured." I'd be really careful about that. Yeah. So I see a lot of you talking about that each other. Yeah, they can learn adaptive behavior, but here's the other thing: you're not gonna, if the neurology is missing for empathy. So there's a couple types of empathy. You can slice empathy two different directions. There's cognitive empathy, and then there is emotional empathy. I have autism. I have impairments with my affective empathy. My emotional empathy is impaired. So I can at times I can miss it and come across a little cold. Now, interestingly enough, my clients loved it because that meant I wasn't reactive. They could say really hard stuff and I would be blank face and sit with them, and they felt very accepted. But at times, if you're my friend, I may miss it, and I may not be show up enough sympathy for you. But I have a lot of cognitive empathy. So I have an incredible ability to put myself in your shoes and imagine life from that perspective, and then have feelings about how that would feel for you. So that's how I compensate, is through cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is teachable. Affective empathy is not. So I won't ever be highly effectively, emotionally empathic. I just won't. But I can be very sensitive when it comes to, because I can put myself in your shoes. So that's one way to think about empathy. So yes, narcissists can learn to be more, to put themselves in your shoes. They can do that. They can learn to do that. Are they good at it? Naturally, no. Most of them are awful at it, but they can learn that. Another way to think of empathy is this, and this is fascinating. This comes out of the work of Dr. David Snarf. It's called mind mapping, the ability to get into someone else's heads and know what they're thinking and what their needs are. That's just incredible. We all do it. By the age of 4, we're already mapping the minds of our parents, and that's when we start lying. We already know what they want us to say. Did you eat cookie before dinner? No. Is the chocolate smeared all over our face? We know the answer they want is to hear no, And so mind mapping is the ability to do that. That's called instrumental empathy. That's manipulative. That's exploitive. It's the ability to know what somebody needs to hear from you and give them that for in order for you to avoid the consequences of that versus compassionate empathy, which is that I feel for you, I care for you, I have respect for you, I want to show up for you. So there's where narcissists have a lot of empathy. They have a lot of instrumental empathy, but they don't have a lot of compassionate empathy. So they will put you down for messing up their life. They will step all over your rights when it comes to, as someone shared, having lots of sex, unprotected sex, and possibly putting this person at risk. But they're also exploitive. They know how to make up and what you need to hear in order for you not to kick them out. They're great at breadcrumbing. They're great at breadcrumbing. Breadcrumbing is the use of instrumental empathy. So yeah, that's fascinating to kind of hear all of that, and we got to watch out for that's back to intentional versus unintentional. Yes, narcissists are intentional about a lot of things that they do, very, very much so. So yeah, they do. I agree with you. Performative empathy. Yeah, that's another great way another good word, performative empathy. Yeah, I agree with you, Billy. They just are very sophisticated, just twisting things and leaving us feeling really, really confused. So Christy says, my husband's a narcissist and he's gotten so much worse over the years and acts with great contempt for me. I used to think he'd change, but he definitely can't. Learning about narcissism helped me cope with him and how not to take his crazy making personality personally. It is devastating. I agree with you, Christy. It is devastating. And you're living in a constant state of fear. That's very, very hard. Very hard. So Cincy Girl says, you mentioned once how you were literally unable to structure complete sentence. I find myself struggling to do that often. Is that a new symptom? I feel stunted. What's happening to me? Are you still in the relationship, Cincy Gal? If you're in the relationship, you're experiencing the neurological damaging effects of cognitive dissonance is what you're experiencing. Yeah. That's because you can't determine what's real and not real, and your brain's working overtime. Yes, that's what Sandra Brown calls it, your brain on fire, and that's having consequences. Your cortisol levels are way too high. You've been living in a chronic state of fight or flight, and it's actually damaging your brain and damaging your executive functioning, and part of that is speaking, being able to articulate. Well, I could not articulate when I was in that relationship. Yeah, it's Georgie. That's exactly what the topic is today. We've been talking about, we're 15 minutes in, but yes, it's intentional, but the protective nature of this, so it's intentional in the sense they know that they're doing bad things, but they don't understand the way that they're reacting defensively is unconscious. So there's an unconscious piece but they know they're lying, and they know that they're cheating, and they know that they know that when you bring up an issue and they make it you instead of making it the issue, that they're doing that. They know that they're doing that. Yeah, Cincy Gal, the real or bigger issue is is there a way for you just to exit the relationship? I know that he's gone 5 days and you only have 2 days a week that you put up with it, but 2 days is still too much. I mean, if it wasn't, then you wouldn't be showing these signs. So your symptoms suggest that's still too much. Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're working on. I know it's hard. I know that it's really, really hard. I know they make it hard. They make sure there's mass destruction for us to leave, which is super, super hard. No, Cynthia, judge is not going to be able to tell if your partner is a narcissist. No. Yes, it will be saved. All these lives are being recorded right now live on YouTube, and it becomes part of the record. So you go to my lives, and then you'll see all the past lives. And this one will be up, and it's called, what did I name it today? You'll recognize it. Well, for one, it's dated today, but you'll recognize it. Yeah, we're coming down to last 7 minutes or so. I want to make sure I don't miss the big questions here. If you guys are, one of the things that narcissists, and I had this great idea for a skit, but it takes a lot of work. And I haven't found the energy and the wherewithal to figure out how to do it. And I want to do it where you run around and whatever you bring up, this person, combats you, attacks you, and then says you're a narcissist when you're obviously not. You're just bringing up ordinary issues. And at the very end, the skit ends with the person sitting down with a therapist, the victim sitting down with a therapist saying, "Am I a narcissist?" That's how I want to do it. But I got to figure out how to do it because it's going to take multiple pieces clipped together. It's going to be a lot of work. But if you're struggling to know if you're the narcissist or not, I have a quiz, and it's in the link in my bio. So for those of you, it's kerrymcavoyphd.com/links with an S, links / So Kerry McAvoy PhD, kerrymcavoyphd.com/links / and it's Am I the Narcissist is a survey that you can take, and it will tell you if you have any narcissistic symptoms and to what degree, mild, moderate, or severe. Yeah, so stargazing, you're not. You scored low. Did you get the results? Because when I first talked about it, it didn't work right. It didn't send people to the result page, which is why everybody was telling me their score. I didn't realize that, but now it works. It's been double checked and it works. You didn't get it? You didn't get it? Oh, okay. Well, you know what? If do you have my email, stargazing? It's anyone who wants to get a hold of me. It's hello@kerrymcavoyphd.com. Hello@kerrymcavoyphd.com. It's in all my bios. Email me and I'll send you the link to that result. Okay. So I'm sorry about that. I didn't know it wasn't working. I was like, ugh. I felt very, very humbled that day when I got done. I'm like, oh shoot, everybody took it and then there's no result. I did send a letter out to everybody, and I don't know why you didn't get it. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, and the reason they're pursuing you is because here, so this is a great ending question. So Emma's asking, how come the relationship's over and we're done, I'm out, but they won't stop hounding me and wanting me back? Why do they do that? Okay, so think about this. I've been talking about the psychological deficits a narcissist has. So imagine for a moment that you're a house and you have a really elaborate roof on this house, but the framing, the walls and the studs don't hold it up very well. It's really weak and shaky. But you get somebody to come in and they sort of like butt up against it and they block it up and they hold it up better. That's what you're doing, by the way. You, as supply, you're holding up that shaky, unsupported roof for them. And they may not even like you. They may not even respect you. They may even cut you down and stuff, but you hold that roof up really well. And then you start to like wake up and realize you're being used to hold the roof up and you start to, skedaddle. They're gonna like, wait. I have no help here with the roof. You can't leave me like this. That's why. Is because they need you to stabilize their personality. Their personality is too shaky without you. They need to find a new person to fill in for you. Now, that's not good. What they need to do is they ultimately need to know how to hold their own roof up, their own self up. But that takes work, and we don't like to do that work. And I already said they have deficits when it comes to self-reflection and looking at oneself. So that makes it tough to change. So that's why they breadcrumb you and pull you back and hoover you and want you not to leave, even when they act like they can't stand you, that they hate you. It's because of that. Yeah, son, that's a great question. How do you handle a person when you're out and you have two children to co-parent with this person? There are really great creators who talk about this a lot. I don't have custody issues. I didn't have children with my ex, so I don't have that. So it's not something I know the ins and outs of so well. But Onyx Arrow Consulting is really good when it comes to high conflict legal advice. Onyx Arrow Consulting. She's both on TikTok and Instagram. Another really good one is Stronger Than Before Coach. Stronger Than Before is on TikTok. Stronger Than Before Coach is on Instagram. She talks a lot about co-parenting issues, how to do it safely, how to do it as low conflict as possible. There's a great book I recommend that you look for by Bill Eddy, 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 called Biff. Brief, informative, factual, and friendly, I believe is what BIFF stands for, BIFF. How to have highly conflictual communications in a non-conflictual way is what the book is about. Well, this has been a lot of fun today. Super, super active. Any last things that you want to talk about before we wrap up? I appreciate all of you hanging out with me. I hope that you have, I know not all of you are in the United States with 4th of July. Yes, BIFF, B-I-F-F, only 2 Fs, B-I-F-F. Yeah, Bill Eddy wrote that book. There's a couple creators here that they're really good on Instagram. Yeah. And yes, I am staying hydrated right here. Oh, you're welcome, Joe Mac. You just researched this, and 7% that are normal also like gelato. Oh, the best gelato place in the whole world ever is in San Francisco North Beach area, right by, I think it's called St. Paul and St. Paul and Peter's Cathedral is a fantastic. I don't know if it's still there. It's been there. I went to school. That's where I got my PhD, was out in San Francisco Bay Area. And so I would sometimes go into the city and get that gelato, and it was amazing, amazing. This has been wonderful. I really loved hanging out with you guys today. I'll be back to, actually, next week. I won't be here. I'm going to be out of town next week. I'm going to be checking out that resort area for our retreat with wellness recovery retreat. And I will be live with Ro and Lisa on Friday. It will be on TikTok this week. We'll be live on Friday on TikTok. And then next Friday, we'll be live on both Instagram and TikTok, but not YouTube. Sorry about that. Hey, great last question. I'll take this question because Rabbit, I think, is a fantastic question. How do I let my therapist know I think I was narcissistically abused? Describe it. And if they don't recognize it by your description, then you're not seeing the right therapist. A therapist who knows a lot about narcissistic abuse will recognize it and will be able to help you. But if they don't recognize it, you probably aren't seeing a therapist who's informed. Oh, I'm glad you feel so much better. I appreciate that. I'll be here Friday talking about the retreat. We'll be talking about healing. So if you're wanting to hear more about how we're healing, join me at noon Central Standard Time on Friday. Otherwise, I'll be back also a week from Friday. And then this will be back 2 weeks from today, or 2 weeks from tomorrow. Have a great 4th, you guys. Stay chilled. Don't get overheated. Be safe. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.